Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another recording of Hearthstone. Today is Wednesday, February 2nd, and we are on the European account. It is the second week of the Rusticon Tavern Brawl, so we'll have to play 3 Tavern Brawls, and also we're going to have to play 30 Mage classes cards.
The roster has been updated.
So reroll that. Battlecry cards. That might be actually a little hard to do. We may have to make a special deck. So, in the previous recording, we did the top row. This, for the European account, we'll do the medium row. So we'll do this one, this one, this one. You just have to play 3 games to get one of the packs, and we just have to win once to get the other, which shouldn't be too big of a problem. We've got a ton of news, so I'm going to try and go through it as fast as possible, although I'm not really gaining tons of momentum going through these. TechRaptor has an article, Eternity the Last Unicorn launches March 5th. This is a 1C Entertainment and Void Studios announced a Nordic Mythos action RPG. This is an interesting looking game because there's kind of not a ton of fantasy games out there, Tolkien-esque fantasy games. Well, there is a ton of them, but there's not a lot of them that are good, and a lot of them are pretty old these days. So I'm looking at the story trailer and I'm seeing some unicorns, and so I think that they're gonna play a big role. I'm seeing a fantasy world and elvish style world. Let's see, heroes take damage, deal 5 damage. I'm seeing giant spiders, I'm seeing caves. I'd say the animation might be a little bad quality, but not terrible. It just doesn't look AAA. Seeing what looks like the ability to jump souls and a giant wolf. I wonder if some of the Shadow of Mordor concepts came back and brought more interest in making games like this. It really is a genre that there should always be. There's a fairy, but I don't think it's going to play a big role. You know, this could be a Zelda-esque game, and for what is a modern Breath of the Wild style clone, like, it would be so easy to do something like that. I'm seeing boss fights, I'm seeing hack and slash and fights like that. Let's see. We need to wait before we do anything, so while we're working on that, we'll just end the turn. So, potential here, certainly. Here's the last unicorn. Eternity the Last Unicorn. But kind of an unknown developer. It'll launch for the PC and PS4 and Xbox One later this year. Xbox One coming out. An action RPG, a new IP. Not a bad idea. Like, every generation, every year, there should be at least one fantasy style game out there. 5 to 0. See, I'm just gonna keep on ending my turn. TechRaptor has another article. Red Hook Studios teases Darkest Dungeon 2. So officially at this point, I don't have all the DLC for Darkest Dungeon 1, and they're now teasing Darkest Dungeon 2. And honestly, more than I think any other game in recent history, I think there's a lot of people who have purchased and not finished Darkest Dungeon 1. It's an incredibly long game. It's a game that potentially, I guess, could be a replacement for what we have here. In the sense of Hearthstone. I could see myself replacing Hearthstone and saying forget it, I'm gonna play Darkest Dungeon every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I don't know how well that would work, because it may take over a week to even play one game. Even the quick take here on Tech Raptors starts. I'll admit I didn't play too much of the first game. My ever-expanding backlog keeps me from some titles that I should definitely give more time, and I'm in the exact same point. There is, as a YouTuber, I guess, an argument now that I should play Darkest Dungeon 1, but then there were many instances when I should have played it. I should have played it when it first came out. I should have played it when the first bit of DLC came out. I should have played it when every other bit of DLC came out. I should have played it when it came out to consoles, when it came out to Switch. There's lots of different times I should have played it. I just didn't have time, and it's such a scary prospect, frankly. For all the time you have to commit. Oh, okay. Gamma Sutra has a slightly misleading article, I believe, here, and we'll have several different articles talking about it. It's titled, "That's a Wrap, Valve is Axing the Steam's Video Sections." This is not 100% accurate. What they're doing is they're getting rid of non-video game related footage. So on Steam's video library, which nobody was using, you had things like Mad Max, Fury Road, The Hunger Games, and Jackie Brown are all listed as examples, as just not gaming videos, not related to video games at all. Whereas maybe the Netflix Castlevania series would be okay to still be on the store. But for the most part, selling videos is not something that Steam is interested in trying to do anymore. So, yeah. What can you really say about that, other than they're making it kind of like a YouTube specifically for videos that are either full quality Final Fantasy anime style movies that are directly related and something that you would bundle in with game sales, and that's why they would be allowed there. Or maybe on the back end they're still hosting some videos where people are posting footage of their games. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if there is a point here where it is a case of, once they opened up Steam Direct and everybody had that requirement to have video footage on their to show off their game, which I think is pretty much a requirement. Maybe what happened was a simple case of yeah, maybe they found out that their video hosting budget was skyrocketing, and they said we need to quit hosting these videos. On the other hand, I could see a lot of parents not wanting to have to navigate that too. Like, I could see parents saying, I'm willing to let a kid play on Steam and have the games that I've purchased for them, but I don't want them to be able to accidentally buy videos like Mad Max Fury Road, which might not be age appropriate. Let's see. What am I doing? The other problem with Valve's video problem is sometimes when I search, like when I search Steins Gate, for example, on Steam's search bar, there are times where you'll get Steins Gate the anime when you clearly, I think most people would not be searching for the anime. They'd be searching for Steins Gate or Steins Gate Elite, which just came out. So I don't blame or even really want to see Steins Gate the anime leave the Valve store if it is bundled with the purchase of the game. That's great. That's a nice bonus ad, but I also don't want to have, I'm sure Valve does not want to have instances where people buy the wrong thing, and then I don't think videos were ever eligible for refunds, or so then you run into this problem of people demanding refunds and being upset because they don't get refunds on something that they never intended to purchase in the first place. So yeah, a lot of Steam's store is a mess, and taking a step back and rethinking their video offerings is another thing to consider. They should also do the same thing with their soundtrack offerings. Like, there's plenty of games where you can buy the soundtrack and it just looks like it's regular DLC, so you could accidentally buy a soundtrack for a game if you just buy all the DLC that you really don't care about. A lot of games come with soundtracks and you don't even know because there's really no indication. A lot of the soundtracks are poorly labeled. Meanwhile, the Steam store is the Steam mobile app does really nothing to make it easy to let's see, whenever this minion takes damage, double it. Like, the Steam mobile app doesn't do anything to let you play music or video on mobile. So that needs work, clearly. It makes sense that you can't Steam Link directly every single game, but there's no, hey, you own this music, maybe you would like it on your cell phone and listen to it while you're out and away from your PC. Or you own this video, maybe you want to watch it while you're on your daily commute to work or school. So yeah, it's still very consistent within the normality of how Valve does everything, which is nobody's really told to do anything. It's just if you are interested in doing something, you do it. If you're not, you don't. Like, nobody cares if anything ever gets finished or done. Could do that, certainly, but that wouldn't help much.
There's a price on your head.
TechRaptor has another article. The roguelike adventure Vanguard's Cold Souls Clutches releases in April. Now, I want to show, I may have this zoomed out a little bit too much, but I want to show a web peek of this game and just say, boy, does this look a lot like Darkest Dungeon. And frankly, if you took the general concepts of Darkest Dungeon, which at least a couple of games have already done, and put them in different environments and maybe not made them so incredibly hard, you've got some competition there. So this game, Vanguard's Cold Soul, launches April 25th for PC and Mac. A console release for the Switch, PS4, and Xbox will follow in Q3 2019. It's a more story-driven Darkest Dungeon that spans 7 different chapters and features different classes and races. That sounds a lot more interesting, frankly, to me, than playing Darkest Dungeon, which is more of a randomized thing. I think we're on to this guy, yeah. So, I certainly don't think I have time to play multiple versions of Darkest Dungeon out there. So more decisions have to be made. I guess I already own Darkest Dungeon, so a spotlight at the very least is demanded at some point. Next we have a game on Steam called MCI Escapes, which looks like it's kind of a dungeon crawler or an asset flip game. It's an asset flip game. You're just all over the place in different times and spaces in your mind. Yeah, right. Early access, $5.99. I have no faith in this game. I could look at this developer and see, but I doubt it. Deal 2 damage. Summon 2 saplings. Yeah, I could look at this developer and just double check to see if they made something else. They haven't. But yeah, that totally seems like it's just an asset flip game. Let's see. Give a minion +2/+2 if it's a beast. Next we have a game on Steam called Planetary Dustoff, which looks like a top-down twin-stick shooter game with not very impressive graphics or UI. Yeah. Early access 10% off for $13.49, which is really expensive. So yeah, we're gonna run into quite a lot of games like that today, I'm sure, that are just gonna be easy to look at and dismiss. So I talked about in the previous recording banging the same drum over and over again. This is really not that concept of just talking about the same thing over and over again. This is actual news. Let's see. Because Gamma Sutra has an article here. Report: China freezes new game approvals as regulators tackle the backlog. So, once again, after 4 to 6 months of not approving any new games for sale in China, China has just flippantly, with no real desire to ensure the industry does not collapse under these oppressive regulations, just said we're not going to improve any new games until we get rid of the backlog that already exists. It was 9 months actually last year, says the article says. This is from the South China Morning Post again, who seems to be the main source for all these things. So, Tencent lost 5% of its shares back in 2018 because of the sales freeze, and that is certainly why Tencent is trying to do its very best to diversify and not just be a China-only game publisher. So over 350 games received their approval, including some from Tencent and NetEase, which are the main players, but a lot of those were mobile games. There's a quote here: "The new freeze could possibly hurt publishers' earnings if they need to endure a prolonged wait for their return on investment in titles in their pipeline that they have had anticipated to be released in China already or in the near future. We are hopeful that this is a procedural halting and will soon be resolved." Shouldn't be a halting at all. Like, you don't stop accepting submissions when you have a backlog. You hire more people to get the work done faster. Because all you're doing is making an artificial backlog, secondary backlog, because as soon as you say, alright, we're taking submissions again, you're going to have hundreds of people submit thousands of games. Let's see what this does. What am I trying to do? Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. China's freezing the approvals of games again. What does that mean for the rest of the world? Not a lot, just more Chinese games are gonna come to Steam, and Steam will never probably make it to China, so we'll just see a lot more cheap Chinese games on the Steam releases, and that most people won't see anyways. Will this point Steam towards a level where
join the pack?
Let's see. Should have done that first. There we go. So yeah, we'll probably just see more bad Steam games, bad cheap Chinese games. We'll probably see less success in the Chinese baby, newly emerging video game development market. We'll see a lot of Chinese video game developers, people that want to be video game developers in China, leave China and go work for other companies in other countries. So you're going to have a brain drain if this is too prolonged, and a skill drain. And it's not like China is full of highly skilled workers anyways. So embracing a tech revolution might be a good idea, as China is slightly embracing an industrial revolution. But then on the other hand, that's just not what they want. They don't want any free flow of any kind of concepts or ideas in China, and they specifically don't want it to be accessible for children. So they think if they can just stymie and destroy the video game industry in China, the Chinese children will fall in line and become good little communists and join the military and follow the government's doctrine perfectly. And I honestly don't think that's too harsh of a way of breaking it down. Let's see. 15 cards. How did I have 15 cards that needed to be dusted? Interesting. And that one's not new. Alright. So what else do we have to do on the European account? Mage cards and battle cry cards. So let's just play mage. Tempo mage. Nope, cancel. Play ranked. Next we have a game on Steam called Theme Park Worker, which looks like it's kind of an asset flip game where you're in a theme park, but there's no people, so it just feels really empty and doesn't look very interesting. $16.99, no discount at all. This is a joke. It's not something that should be that expensive. It's not something that really should be purchased by anybody. Let's see, Gamatsu has an article. Skullgirls 2 Skullgirls Second Encore for the Xbox One and Switch launches in this spring. So we can take a where's my mouse cursor? Skullgirls Second Encore Skybound shop selling limited Switch physical edition. Skullgirls being a fighting game. It's a little bit weird and different. That's trying to break into the market like a BlazBlue game. I've not heard anything bad about it, so I think it's probably a pretty decent fighting game. Maybe one of the ones where I would say you're in the middle tier of fighting games. But there is definitely an argument to be made that it's possible Skullgirls might be better than Street Fighter, might be better than some of the Mortal Kombat games, might be better than some of the games that traditionally you would think are AAA top tier fighting games, but like Street Fighter is gotten greedy and isn't really that good. Depending on what version of Street Fighter you're talking about, I could see people abandoning it and saying, nah, no more Street Fighter, not Street Fighter 5, not Street Fighter 6. Those aren't worth playing. Gamasutra has an article, Come to US, COMTU, and then capital S, acquires a majority stake in the visual novel developer Day 7. So this is a South Korean publisher, Come to US. There's probably not a lot to say here from a Western perspective, because it's just a little too inside baseball for visual novels, even for me, who tries really hard to cover visual novels and not just ignore them like most of the rest of the Western video game media. Day 7 I've never heard of. The Seoul-based studio Day 7 has released over 30 novels, it says, on both iOS and Android devices, with Wannabe, a role-playing game targeting women for its core audience, as its latest game in development. So these are visual novels coming out on cell phones, which, you know, that might work, it might not, it depends on, particularly if you have to squeeze a lot of text on the cell phone in English. Like, I can see visual novels working with Asian characters way better on cell phones, because there's a lot more that can be said in the same amount of dots per inch. Yeah, I've not really seen anything that straight up calls itself a visual novel on cell phones, but there certainly have been some games I've seen ads for that totally have that feeling. Like that's what they really are, even if they're not saying that's what they really are.
Science overwhelmed.
Gamatsu has another article. Baba Is You launches March 13th. This is a puzzle game where you change the rules by which you play. You can change the rules by which you play. Visually, I will say it's not very appealing for the screenshot. It seems almost like it's a programming thing. It says wall is stop, Baba is you. So maybe you just change it to walls go. It has a Steam page, so it's something that's already existed. So maybe despite its bad looking graphics, there's something here. So this might be a weird case. No, it's not out on Steam yet. This might, I was about to say this might be a case where I actually go back and add a game that I had already rejected onto the follow list and reconsidered it. So I'm watching this game, Baba Is You. Basically, you're this dog that you push the blocks, and that changes the rules of the world. So it's kind of like a rogue, well, top-down rogue style game with programming elements. It's coming out March 13th, so I could put it on the fall list today, or I could wait. I probably should just wait, though. Like, I really don't see a reason to do anything extra. Let me just double check this game. See if it's family friendly enough for YouTube. Yeah, it looks close enough. Next we have a game on Steam called Dungeon Dreams. It's an RPG maker game with I like the anime girl style. Like that the animation of this guy is not great though. Like you can see there's definitely more effort done drawing her than him. And yeah, this is just, there's a ton of these RPG maker games. $10.99 is way too expensive. They come out, a lot of these also come out in Japan, and they have like full-on nudity and sex scenes in them, but then sometimes they come out to Steam and they've been edited out, so then you just have a bad looking RPG maker game that really has no reason to exist. Yeah, there's no reason why Dungeon Dreams would go on the fall list though. That's something. Yeah, I don't see how I would ever cover a dungeon crawler game, RPG maker game, unless it's the top tier best one ever made. If there is such a thing. Tech Raptor has an interesting article. This doesn't have so much to do with video games other than Magic the Gathering Arena, but Magic the Gathering, which at some point was acquired by Hasbro, is now dropping the manufacturer suggested retail price from their products. So no longer will there be a price tag on the packaging, is what I'm getting from that. I'm about to lose, so I did my best. Although I should have probably played that because I'm trying to play mage cards. So packages could sell for any amount. That probably doesn't change too much though, because there's always been people, I imagine, totally willing to overcharge and say magic cards are cost this much and put a sticker over the price tag is generally how people do that. So they're just making it easier to put a sticker over the packaging, or just say packs cost this much. From what I've heard, as somebody who hasn't played Magic in decades, it's a lot better to do individual trades at specific card shops than to do blind package openings anyways, if you're trying to make some be efficient with your money. The only people that really should be opening the blind packages would be people that are in tournaments where you have to just open 50 packs right then and there and make a deck out of that, which that's Magic the Gathering has always been a rich man's game, and it's just even more rich when you start talking about tournaments like that. Or people that have tons of money and are willing to buy entire boxes and see if they can get one really expensive card to sell back and potentially make it. The variety of value on Magic the Gathering cards is insane in my opinion. Frankly, I don't think you could do the same with Pokemon cards. I think with a few rare exceptions in first generation Japanese versions of Pokemon cards, I think you could probably get a close to complete collection of the Pokemon trading card game relatively cheap. Whereas if you were to try to get a complete collection of Magic cards, you're talking thousands and thousands of dollars, I'm sure. And it's always important when talking about Magic to realize that they constantly ban and basically just reissue the same cards with different names and different different art, but they do the exact same thing. So even if you had a good deck for a year or two, those cards would eventually be banned for tournament play, for as much as that matters to some people. And then you'd have to try and spend more money to replace the cards. Hearthstone's kind of that way too. The cards get nerfed and cards get banned, and then they slowly release new things to replace them, but they haven't been too terrible about it. So far we haven't seen something like this Kirin Tor Mage that's a 3/4/3 with a secret costing 0. We haven't seen anything like this get banned and then replaced. Usually there's a bit of a power creep that they were planning for, although they, from what I hear, are starting to back off the power creep concept too. And one of the developers was asking, like, famous streamers what would get you back into playing main, and a lot of people are saying tournament mode, whatever that means. That's not really describing it to me. Personally, I want to see a much higher win ratio. That's always been my complaint. Shooting for 50% win ratio is terrible, because that boils down to, if they wanted to make a card that says flip a coin, heads you win, tails you lose, that card would be in no way worse than playing any random ranked game. It would be totally worth it to play that card every time you get it, just because it would save you time, and you're only getting about a 50% win ratio anyways. My suggestion to fix this is simply, before you get to rank 1 legendary, any ties, any fatigue that happens ends in a tie where both people win and both people move up in rank. Does that artificially push everybody up towards rank 1? Sure. Does that feel good to most players? Great. Yes, absolutely. So just not being stuck at rank 20 every month, and for the years I've played Hearthstone, still being stuck at rank 20 for the amount of time I spend and the amount of effort I'm willing to put into it. A lot of the big time streamers, they have problems that just normal players are not going to have and they can't really address. Like, they have all the cards, and they have all the cards in gold, and they have all kinds of extra dust. So there's literally nothing you can do other than constantly try to put out more and more content to satisfy streamers and only streamers. Meanwhile, that just alienates everybody who's new to the game or doesn't have complete collections. So yeah, a lot of the streamers, a lot of the people who've been playing since beta do kind of need to burn off, and they need to attract new players. TechRaptor has an article. New Steam About page details the platform's many features. A new Steam About page was launched detailing the many features on offer on Valve's own digital distribution client. So,
what to do?
Let's see. We can look at it. It's really just kind of a sales pitch to install Steam. So it's talking about features like Steam Chat, game hubs. If I do this, Steam broadcasts, Steam Workshop, available on mobile, early access to games, multilingual, purchases made easy, controller support, and so much more. Like, they really just updated their webpage. It's news. Is it important news? Not really. Like, okay, Steam updated their About page. Still, from personal experience, there's some people I'd like to convince to install Steam that will never install Steam. And these days, there's a lot of people out there that don't even have PCs that could even install the Steam client, let alone any of the games that Steam has to offer. But if you're a PC gamer, installing Steam is pretty easy unless you have all your games on some other client, and I don't know how you would do that unless you're just getting everything on the Twitch store, or you've gone Good Old Games. The Good Old Games are out, and you want DRM free games. It really comes down to how many games do you really want. I could see a lot of people starting just on the Epic launcher if they only want to play Fortnite on their PC, and then eventually realizing, well, if I want to have more than just Fortnite on my PC, I'm gonna have to install a different launcher of some sort. There will be basically a system seller game out there, and since Steam doesn't do exclusives, and let's hope that they don't start doing exclusives, there's not a big system seller for Steam. Other than, I guess Steam may actually have Counter-Strike Go, and all their software may be Steam exclusives, but they're not gonna just do a lot of that. Moving on, Gamatsu has an article. Voez, V-O-E-Z, for Switch is updated to version 1.6, and they added 16 songs. Voez being a musical rhythm kind of anime game. Seems to be somewhat popular, but not amazingly popular. Did we get enough done here? Let's see. Let's go over to your Asian account, and I think playing Battlecry cards might just be a grind we do on Friday, like, or we may come back and make a special Battlecry deck with just cards that are all Battlecry. Meanwhile, we know we've got more work to do on the Asian account. I've got tons of news and I'm not going through it very fast. Game Master has an article. Benjamin Rivers announces a horror thriller called Worse Than Death for the PS4, Switch, PC, and iOS. A high school reunion that goes horribly wrong.
It's good to see you again.
I have no idea who Benjamin Rivers is. This looks like it's probably a comedic, almost like point-and-click adventure games. Home and Alone with You creator. I've never heard of Home and Alone with You. But whatever. This might be a good game. Might not. So, I'll watch the trailer.
The roster has been updated.
Says it's mature 17 plus in the trailer. Interesting. That was not what I was expecting. So I'm thinking it's going the horror route. Yeah. It says it's a scary, emotional thriller. So we need a game with the Shaman and Warlock, and 3 games with the Rogue Warrior and Tavern Brawls, and this is going to all line up.
Welcome to the Brawl of Champions! Choose your fighter and lead them to glory!
I'm seeing some puzzles, and this might be something that interests me, or it might not. It looks like one of these games where you have to hide when the enemy gets in that screen, and so I'm gonna, when this actually comes out on Steam, I'll be willing to put it on the follow list, but I'm not really willing to immediately assume that this is something I want to play, because there's been some horror games like that where discard 6 cards. Let's see if we can do that. There definitely have been some horror games out there that that are just redundant and irritating. So we're gonna play this quest. Whenever you discard a card, summon a random demon. Alright. Got this. So we play this. And then in the turn. So we've got a game on Steam here called Capture the Planet Cute War that's clearly just a Angry Birds clone from a long time ago. In fact, it looks like they very possibly just stole some of the artwork from Angry Birds. 99 cents. I don't see any reason why I would play an Angry Birds clone. And if I was going to play an Angry Birds clone, it would have to do something really crazy. Let's see, discard your lowest cost card. Let's see.
The truth is in here.
That's a shame, though. This guy was dead. TechRaptor has an article. Viz Media's The World Next Door release date has been set for March 2019. Now, this is interesting because Viz Media, here's a screenshot of the game. I don't know what it really is. Interesting. Viz Media is... Viz is like the manga publisher that sometimes publishes anime? I didn't even know they were making games. The World Next Door is set to arrive on PC, Mac, and Nintendo Switch for the price of $14.99. Soundtrack bundle. You can wishlist it now. You can see this does not feel like this is a purely Eastern animation style. This feels like it's a new IP from Viz Media. Now this is a very fuzzy claim I'm gonna make, and I could be totally wrong about it. It couldn't have totally not been Viz Media, or I could be totally wrong about the story completely. But I vaguely, just ever so vaguely, recall there being a instance where people were encouraged to post their own fan art manga on some website and potentially get it published, but they weren't really getting to keep the royalties or the license for it, and so it was just like young artist exploitation. Maybe all of that has long since been dealt with, and maybe it wasn't Viz Media, so I don't know. The first thing on this trailer is a quote from Polygon, so that's weird. So this looks like the game is a match 3 game where you have a character standing on tiles, and when it matches 3 or more, it casts some kind of spell. There we go. Death Rattle, draw a card. Everybody that's animated in this, by the way, in this game is got just a weird animation style. Definitely some weird looking monster teens. I would bet this game, the story sucks. I would definitely bet that is part of it. It says, in the world next door, you'll play as a rebellious teenager, June, who manages to get herself stuck in a parallel world filled with strange creatures. Which the article goes on to say that's basically 50% of all the isekai or another world manga on the market. Yeah, I'll see this. It says this upcoming game was first announced a little over a year ago as one of the first ventures undertaken by a media company that is largely focused on bringing Japanese manga and anime to the Western audience. Rose City Games has been busting their butts to get it done, and now they look. So it feels like what they're doing is they're publishing a game from Rose City Games.
In silence, fool.
I'll find it.
Job done.
This might be a cool idea for a game, though. The concept of having characters stand on tiles to match 3 to cast spells to defeat the other character who's trying to stand on tiles to cast spells is slightly unique, but it could be incredibly repetitive and boring rather fast. And frankly, if it didn't have Viz Media as the publisher, I probably wouldn't have even looked at it. Let's see. What are we trying to do?
I'll
Draw a
find
card. And discard a card. Now we we've got the Nether portal, which we can just play. Excellent. TechRaptor has an article. This one caught my eye because I just played Overlord 2, and I'd like to see a Overlord style game. I'd like to see an Overlord style game come out. I'd also kind of like to see a Pikmin style game come out. I think there's room actually to separate those two anyways, and have a game where you play as an evil overlord where you're not really doing the Pikmin mechanic. So I have 2 more games I need to play, even though I won. And I think there's a game that could be made that is Pikmin-esque. And there might be a lot of hoops you have to jump through to make a game like that and not just be sued for copyright infringement. Since Pikmin, for example, are these plant-like creatures on a microscopic planet Earth, you probably would have to take it into like a fantasy realm or a sci-fi realm, something away from cutesy realistic.
But I never forget, never forgive.
Alright. That got disconnected immediately. And that counted. We may go back and play that one again. So this article is Raise a Hellish Army in Iradus, Lord of the Dead, coming summer 2019. Which, yeah, you could certainly make a Necromancer game in general, and you're just doing, you could rip off Overlord and do it better. Clearly Codemasters is not going to do it better. That's the thing is, and Nintendo is really not interested in making any Pikmin games right now. They may make one eventually, but yeah, and there is a rumor or an announcement that they were going to bring back a long dead series title. That could mean anything at all, quite frankly. And now that I'm looking at the trailer for this game, Iradus, Lord of the Dead, unfortunately it's more like Darkest Dungeon than it is a action strategy game, which is what I was looking for. So yeah, I was seeing something there that I hoped for instead of seeing something there that really was there. Iradus, the Lord of the Dead, might be good, might be bad. We'll wait until it comes out in summer of 2019 to make that decision. But yeah, if anybody does know of a Pikmin-esque clone on Steam, besides Overlord, let me know. If anybody knows an action, story-driven game, I can't heal myself, so whatever.
Right away.
Healing enemies damages them instead. I really did not look at what I was doing. Yeah. Yeah, I just think there should be a few more fantasy you play as the bad guy games out there, and there probably is. It's set in a Tolkien-esque fantasy world, but I can't think of them. Let's see.
Death call. Right away.
Playing. TechRaptor has an article. If My Heart Had Wings side story collection, Flight Diary, is coming to Steam. So here we have another collection of visual novel, anime girl localization Moe novel announced. Let's see. Although the original Flight Diary collection was rated 18+, much like the existing official versions, the fan disc was also geared towards a wider audience. There's currently no given price, but given that If My Heart Had Wings is currently $14.99, one would expect Flight Diary to be cheaper. Let's see. Is there anything else really to say here? No. Just kind of applaudable that TechRaptor, and that's one of the reasons, like, I have something nice to say about TechRaptor and something not nice to say about TechRaptor today. But it's nice to see a Western developer, even if it's a lesser known Western developer, cover visual novels and not just ignore them like they don't exist. On the other hand, there is an article that we may get to at some point today, but we very well may not. The TechRaptor came out where it was like queer characters in video game history, and it's kind of a clickbaity article. TechRaptor is half that, half they do something good, and then half the time they do clickbait articles, and they're putting out things that aren't that great.
At last, a worthy disciple.
That article in itself, queer characters in video games, it's been done so many times before. There's no reason to rewrite that article other than to potentially push some form of agenda. I won't even give a guess as to which agenda it is, although I do have a guess. Unless there was a new character out today that made that make sense, there's no reason to write that article again. And if a new character was introduced at that point, I suppose there might be a reason to do something like that, but not until. Do I want to do anything?
My eyes are open.
Yeah, and I just don't think there has been any new characters that are worth mentioning in that way to justify that article coming out for the billionth time. Speaking of articles, and a lot of these stories are I'm talking off the top of my head because I talked about them Monday when I lost the footage. The author who wrote the Kotaku article that first called out Riot Games for a hostile work environment, a sexist work environment. This was the article that, as it was reported to me, did not seem like it was well written and felt like it was just a hit piece. That article was given an award. The award is almost certainly was voted on by other journalists. So, like, mainstream video game journalists gave an award to people who, to me, that article felt like it was pushing a hashtag #MeToo style agenda and accusation agenda, which is just continuously going on throughout all of the world in all industries right now. That being said, it is fair to say that later articles and later discovery that I saw on Riot did bring about what felt like more legitimate complaints. It's just that original Kotaku article didn't sound like it was that. And in the end, do I want the mainstream video game media to focus on writing hit pieces and exposés on the culture inside of of video game developers. I don't want them to focus on it. Maybe in Riot's case it was necessary. And as somebody, I have to admit, I didn't actually read the original Kotaku article. I only saw it rephrased, so maybe it was Gamma Sutra's fault. But the complaints that were raised did not feel like the journalists had done enough journalism in the sense that they had taken the complaints that were illegitimate and gotten rid of them. It felt a lot like the complaints against Channel Awesome on YouTube, where there was this extremely long like 90-page expose from different people that had been collected of complaints, and a lot of the complaints didn't seem very legitimate, but there were some complaints that did seem legitimate, and had a journalist gone through that information and broken it down, it would have been better. What is this? Wait, what in the freaking world is that? What in the world just happened? Why was there the bomb ship? Interesting. I've never seen that card. So yeah. So your opinion on that article really, and I'm trying to be as fair as possible. I wasn't as fair Monday in the last footage, but your opinion of that article determines your opinion on whether the article deserves to have been rewarded with an award. And I do want to be objective enough that I could look at an article and say, well, that was well researched and that was well written and that was relevant news that you put out. And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of people on the other side, the anti-SJW side, that put out terrible articles and terrible arguments, and it's oh, you're just a bunch of soy boys, and did I hurt your fifis? And I'm like, oh, that's not helping anything either. That's not good reporting either. So
I am freed from the curse.
So both things. I want to see better journalism in general, even over journalism that I agree with, and I hope most people can eventually get to that point too, where they want to see better journalism. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Snakebird Primer, which looks like it's a working your way around the edges of a platform to get where you're supposed to go. Kind of need to see this in motion to see. So it's kind of like Snake, I guess, where you can just move up and down. It's just on the game Snake on a 3D environment. And it seems like as long as one piece of your body is touching the ground, you maintain your form. I would say no. I don't think that's. I know we have the cards, but I want to play this a second time. Yeah, I don't think Snakebird Primer is good enough. Gamatsu has the media create sales for the 11th to the 17th. This is Japan. Jump Force as far was number 1 for PS4. Then Catherine Full Body Limited Edition included is there. People on Reset Era. Here's another story that I don't really want to talk about, but they're upset that one of the multiple endings on Catherine Full Body has a person who is considering transitioning ending up happy that they didn't transition, and Reset Era, being all SJWs, basically found that so incredibly offensive that one individual in a fictional story might be happy making a decision that they don't agree with. I mean, and that's the kind of lunacy that feeds the other side to say, oh yeah, they're going to force everybody to transition eventually. It's like, well, yeah, if you're pushing an agenda that hard, that argument sounds more valid when it really isn't. Let's see. Do you summon a minion? Give it +1 whenever you freeze a character. Put a frost line into your hand. Need to play this card then. Number 3 is Super Mario Bros. U. Number 4 is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Number 5 is Far Cry New Dawn. Doesn't sound like too many people liked Far Cry New Dawn. Doesn't sound like too many people liked Crackdown 3 either. Number 6 is Kingdom Hearts 3. Number 7 is Metro Exodus. It didn't sound like, from what I'm getting, that Metro Exodus is completely bug-free, which is a bit of a problem. Interesting.
I am impressed.
And if I just had one more spell card. Let's see. Number 8 is Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee. Number 9 is Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Number 10 is Resident Evil 2, the Z version and the limited edition version. So Resident Evil 2 is not staying in the top 10 probably next week, which is kind of a shame. By the way, there's a mod out there, as there is for almost every game, where you can make, I believe, Claire, the female character, nude in Resident Evil 2, which definitely puts a different spin on it. Because, like, the idea of running around completely nude as zombies are running around trying to eat your face off certainly makes it a little bit more terrifying if you can get into the mind of that character. Otherwise, it's just for visual appeal. And frankly, they had already done that with the Ghost Survivors DLC, because one of the characters is this somewhat younger girl who's running around in a nightie as the zombie apocalypse is happening. So they had already kind of gone in that direction. Number 11 was Super Mario Party. Number 12 is Nobunaga's Ambition Tatsai with the power-up kit. Why is that game coming back out? If I'm wrong here, Nobunaga's Ambition was like a game that was designed specifically to insult Nobunaga, the emperor, not the emperor, but the prime minister who was caught in doing like corrupt business dealings. And and I guess it must have been a pretty good game that a new release is coming out. 13, I could be totally wrong about what Nobunaga's Ambition is. I could be thinking of a different game. 13 is the PlayStation Vita Catherine Full Body. 14 is Minecraft Nintendo Switch Edition. 15 is Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. 16 is Splatoon 2. That's good for Breath of the Wild and Splatoon 2 to still be in the top 20 best sellers for a week. 17 is a PlayStation Vita game called Kin Iro no Cordia Octave, which is a Koei Tecmo game. It's probably a JRPG. 18 is Ace Combat 7 Skies Unknown, which is kind of impressive that that's still on sale. Let's see. Let's do this.
Nice to meet you.
Probably have killed this guy too, come to think of it. Let's see. 19 is Dragon Quest Builders 2, and 20 is Nobunaga's Ambition for the Nintendo Switch. Interesting. Hardware sales wise, Switch is the number 1, PlayStation 4 is the number 2, PlayStation 4 Pro is number 3, the new 2DS LL is number 4, the PlayStation Vita is number 5. That Vita is still selling great, even though they've announced that they're going to stop developing them. Number 6 is new 3DS LL, then the 2DS, and then the Xbox X and the Xbox One. It's important also to point out that the 2DS only sold 142 units compared to the new 3DS LL, which is the one above it, which sold 1,254 units. The Xbox One X only sold 55 units, so 1/3 of what the 2DS sold, and the Xbox One original only sold 13 units. And I do not believe these are in thousands or anything, or hundreds or anything. I think literally the Xbox One sold 13 units last week, which is not unexpected. Like, that's not really that surprising. The Xbox does not sell. It literally does not sell in Japan. Let's see. If you target as a frozen minion, destroy it. Alright, so what do we need to do? This, and then do this. And let's see. Probably could have just won then. Is there anything else to say about that? Those sales reports? No. But it's always nice to spend some extra time and see how sales are going in Japan and see what's selling, what isn't. And last week, this week are big weeks, certainly, with a lot of games coming out. Kind of surprisingly, too, that they're coming out. Alright. Gamatsu has an article, Fate Extella Link launches March 22nd. That's for the PS4, Switch, and PS Vita in Europe, and PC via Steam March 19th. So we're getting another Fate style game, although I'm not sure what the Fate Extella series is per se. Like, that's kind of would be helpful to know. Okay, we need something that could freeze, and we can't do that. So we need this to draw a card. That didn't work. Alright, so start killing. Like, I could have frozen this guy, certainly, but that wouldn't have done anything. So, we'll do a web peek here. This is the screenshot they gave us for Fate Extella. Not really a lot going on here as far as knowing what it is. You know what's really killing my time is watching the trailers. Like, this is a 1 and 44 second trailer. Fate Extella. Yeah, it's Extella. Kind of looks like it might be a Warriors game where you're hacking and slashing through large groups. And you're selecting through a large group of fighters, which that would be accurate for the Fate series, because that's what the whole series is about, is that there's a whole bunch of different fighters out there. Yeah, it looks like it's a Warriors game. Okay, yeah, I can see that. Playing a Warriors style game, like Samurai Warriors, instead of dealing with the Chinese stories of like Samurai Warriors or something. I could follow the probably more complicated stories of the Fate series. Or ignore all of it and just play the game. Like, we've opened 2 card packs for every account today. I don't think we've gotten a single new card. And we may just be at that point where we're close to a new expansion happening. I wouldn't be surprised if they sneak out a new expansion like in the next couple of weeks, or maybe they'll give us a month, but I don't think it's going to go that far. That was one suggestion that a big streamer said they wanted to see is more expansions come out, and I'm like, no, please no. We don't need more expansions if the cards are bad. I'm fine with more expansions if the cards are always good, but they really aren't. The last expansion in particular, like, there's a lot of cards here that either I got the second copy of, or this is just glitched. Either one could be the case. There we go, disenchant that for 50. There we go. And so where does this leave us on victories? We need rogue or warrior victories, which are pretty tough to get. Yep. Alright, so we have a game on Steam called Clash Battle Arena that looks like it's a samurai fighting game. It's a little rough. Like, I'm not sure I'd really want to play something like this. The idea of a 2D samurai fighting game programmed really, really well makes sense. This name sounds fake. Mason Butterwick. Like, that idea is a cool idea, what we're saying right here. But having it actually be a complicated and well-programmed system falls right into that Ubisoft game that they've been pushing. They pushed for like a year straight and nobody wanted to play. I don't even remember the name of that. I want to call it Dishonored, but that's not it. But there was a sword fighting Ubisoft multiplayer game with microtransactions. And yeah, that was pushed really hard and heavily marketed. I think kind of stealth marketed too in a lot of cases without proper disclosure. But yeah, nobody wanted to play that game. I don't know how much of this I'm gonna deal with. How much we're gonna play more. Gamma Sutra has an article. Tencent introduces streaming rules to stay on the up and up with Chinese laws. So here's a quick breakdown of what their new streaming rules are. This is rules for streamers playing Tencent games, which I kind of think that probably also they're trying to expand these rules to any streamer anywhere in the world playing Tencent rules, which this is like China trying to impose their rules on the rest of the world. But it more than likely would only be really enforced on Tencent's own streaming sites or through Tencent's own website. I would guess. Like, if this really is going to be a case of Tencent all of a sudden starts trying to do DMCA takedowns on YouTube videos because people are playing their games and talking about sensitive social values, sensitive topics such as politics, ethnicity, and religion. So hey, let's just go through this right now and just violate all these rules. I don't think I'm ever playing a Tencent game, and like Tencent owns Fortnite, so violation of China's social values, including topics such as politics, like how China is a dictatorship, ethnicity, like how China has been involved and I believe is currently involved in ethnic cleansing, and religion, like how China is currently involved in religious persecution. Promoting or publishing content that violates China's social values, including but not limited to pornography. Pornography is great, you should check it out. Go to Pornhub if you're over 18. Gambling. Gambling's great, you should go gamble if you're old enough. And terrorism. Terrorism's bad. Can't say anything bad there. Can't violate all the rules, I guess. Behaviors that damages Tencent's brand directly or indirectly. Tencent's brand sucks. Distributing false information to other users through any means. Yeah, I'm sure that that's just straight up, we'll just call anything we don't like fake news.
Here we go.
Like, I wonder if that includes saying President Xi, it looks like Winnie the Pooh. Engaging in vulgar and indecent information. I bet that does include saying President Xi. I think that's how you pronounce his name. It looks like Winnie the Pooh.
I fight. I fight.
This guy's toast.
Let's see. Distributing or promoting game cheat software or virus software. You can get those if you want to get them. I wouldn't recommend it. Promoting excessive violence in game or in the real world. I'm fine with violence in game. I'm not fine with it in the real world. Infringing on the privacy of others or revealing others' users' information without permission. Can't really infringe on that one. Failure to abide the rules of the contract signed with third parties, streaming platformers. Infringing on the copyright of the game makers or other content creators. Can't really disagree too much with that, although that's like Tencent trying to enforce copyright law on top of China trying to enforce China's copyright law on top of YouTube trying to enforce their interpretation of US copyright law. There's like 5 different entities in there that would potentially that potentially could claim a violation when none actually exists. Infringing on the copyright of the game makers and other content creators, causing disputes or adverse social impact. Yeah. What can I say? Like, there should be a revolution in China. People should rise up. Probably. Other actions do not comply with current laws, ethics, and game regulations. Well, so, in statements spotted by the Esports Observer, A Tencent represents that as the behavior of streamers reflects back on the company and industry, which is not true. Absolutely not true. Tencent has the responsibility to enforce certain standards and values. The company notes that it plans to strictly enforce those rules across all streaming platforms, productions, institutions, and streamers. Okay, so that's a straight up I was wrong there. There's a natural copyright relationship between gamers, contents, and live streaming platforms, reads the statement. I'm not sure I agree with that either. I'm not sure there's really any relationship between Tencent and a streamer, just because you're covering their game. I mean, this is way overreach. This is ridiculous. So I guess we'll be banning any Tencent games. Like, we'll have to see how this really goes, because Hearthstone is, I think it's Epic is owned in part by Tencent, but Tencent owns a lot of things, so I wouldn't be surprised if they own some bit of Activision Blizzard too. But I have no intention of following these rules. I have no care for what Tencent thinks I should do, and they have no way of really enforcing it. They can try and claim copyright, and I'll probably never cover their content in the first place, just to blacklist them preemptively, but I'm confident that content created by a lot of streamers, not all streamers, is fair use and in no way has to follow the laws of a foreign country or the interpretation of laws by a corporation, laws of a foreign country. People on Google, YouTube only have to follow the United States laws, because YouTube is a United States company. And people living in the United States only have to follow United States laws. Otherwise, it would be so easy for places like China or Russia to say everybody is a criminal in the United States, extradite them, export them for summary execution.
Here we go.
Moving off that rant, I don't think I'm gonna hit any of the games that we have in our backlog. This is just all new stuff that we've been covering so far. We have a game on Steam called World Peace Simulator 2019. This looks like it's kind of like a Plague Incorporated style game, strategy game. I'm not sure it's visually appealing enough is the problem. This bland background here is just it's a little too bland, and the interface is just not polished enough. They want $4.24 discounted right now. And yeah, I just don't trust this to be a complicated enough game to maintain any interest in it.
This guy's toast.
What am I trying to do right now, by the way?
Here we go.
Just not lose. Let's see. I'm gonna take a moment to see if I can type in Tencent into Steam, and let's see. Brings up Ring of Elysium. Tencent Games right now on Steam has 2 games on Steam. A free-to-play game called Ring of Elysium, which is early access, which we can ban that. and ignore that, and a game called Shadow Mist, which is developer Tencent game, which is mixed reviews. We can ban that and never play that. Yeah, and that's the only 2 games on Steam that even seem like they are coming up under Tencent Games. There's another game. The second thing that comes up is Eternity Warriors VR, which has a different developer and a different name. So yeah. So if the second game that comes up on Steam is not actually even a Tencent game, then they're not labeling games that they own as Tencent games, so I can only move ahead in ignorance if Tencent owns some portion of something. But certainly statements like that are the reason why people in part make claims that Chinese companies are just wings of the Chinese government and under direct, complete control of the Chinese government, and they are just only really in existence to push forward an economic warfare tactic of expanding their influence and their values outside of their own borders, which again China is always expanding.
None will survive.
So yeah, don't ever do business with China. What can you say?
The light protects me.
Next we have a game on Steam called Tokyo Warfare Turbo, which looks like it's a tank game. And it looks kind of interesting on the video. I don't know how fun it really would be to play a game where you're driving around tanks fighting other tanks. There have been other versions of games like this with much uglier graphics. This is a free-to-play game. It's also a single-player game. I guess it has DLC that you would buy. Let's just go ahead and silence this guy.
Speak your peace.
I fight.
So, yeah, if it wasn't a free-to-play game, I might consider playing it. But since it's free-to-play, if you want to play Tokyo Warfare Turbo, it's out there. GameIndustry.biz has the same article that we already talked about. Valve retires non-gaming content from the video on demand service. Blockbuster movies fail to find traction on Steam, which is fine. People who've previously purchased the content will remain available. You'll still have that content theoretically forever, so you don't really have to worry about that, but it kind of sucks. Like, I want to kill that? Not really. But it's probably the right thing to do. I still agree with the decision. It's just kind of not the direction that I feel like Steam was going to be successful in going. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Hentai Minesweeper. I don't want these to flip too much because some of these might be not safe for work. Again, combining a very low effort Minesweeper game with just either pre-purchased or stolen anime girls in the background. I kind of like the art style of this animation, but I certainly wouldn't want to have to play Minesweeper just to see a few pictures. $1.19 discounted. Every language support, and soon DLC, and 38 achievements also while we're at it.
go.
What does this guy do?
What a bother.
I fight.
We haven't really been seeing a lot of low effort games come on this Steam in a while. So I don't know what to say there. Have they been rejecting a lot of low effort submissions, or have people just kind of figured out that they will get rejected immediately for those low effort games, or they'll get pushback or challenge, or maybe people have just figured out it doesn't make them money? I'm not really sure it actually makes them money. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of people who try scams on Valve and Steam, but don't actually profit from them, and it costs them more money in the long run. Moving on, Gamatsu has a article. Oninaki creative producer is Chrono Trigger director Takashi Tokita. And we'll do a web peek for those names. Oninaki creative producer, Chrono Trigger director Takashi Tokita, and the action RPG that is throughout the summer. We've got some pictures here that from a magazine. So it's the newly announced latest issue of Weekly Famitsu. Oninaki is due out for the PS4, Switch, and PC this summer. Development is currently 65% complete. I always wonder how they get those numbers. If I was developing a video game, I would definitely struggle to figure out what percentage of completion I was at. I could probably tell you a percentage of content that's complete, but I couldn't tell you for a second how close it is to being perfectly playable and bug-free, or how many more systems might need to be programmed to support the major systems. Next we have a game on Steam called Refraction, which looks like it's just a fly around asteroids game. It's slightly different in that you spin a stick to attack the asteroids. The graphics look a little bit better than your average neon glow fare, but still, this is not a game that really I think anybody needs to play. $2.99 discounted. This isn't going to be the next great arcades game, because there really is never going to be a next great arcade game.
Here we go.
I have like one more game, and then I'm hitting the games that were left over from not only Monday but the week before. So we've got a game on Steam called Catacombs, which looks like it's a high-speed minecart rail racing shooter game. It's an interesting combination of several things that usually don't go together. It's got this darkness mechanic. I can immediately tell you I don't like that. I'd like to see that go away. If there was more polish visually in the background and the graphics, this might be an interesting sequence in the game. I'm not sure you get a full game out of this though, because this is just kind of an infinite runner. It looks like it's $1.99. And in a lot of ways, it kind of is just a bullet hell shooter with a different bit of art on top of it. Because bullet hell shooters, you're flying planes and basically doing the same thing anyways. Here we go.
Here we go.
Victory. We need one more victory at the least. TechRaptor has an article, Gen 1 Pokemon prototype reveals unused monsters, maps, and more. A slightly interesting idea. You might want to check it out if you want to see some of the monsters that weren't used. There was definitely stuff we knew about as far as the original Pokemon, where the Pokemon looked more like monsters and not as cute and friendly to start off with. I was also watching a video that this is like a inside baseball programming video where they had encoded all the cries into the Game Boy in a very specific way for the Pokemon so that it saved a lot of space, and it made it so that every Pokemon really only had like 5 MIDI notes to its cry, but they figured out a way to make that sound varied and unique. Komatsu has an article, Astral Chain Platinum Games page details. So Astral Chain was one of the mini games that were announced at the Nintendo Direct, and it's a Platinum Games game, so that's the creators of Bayonetta, so that's slightly interesting, although I'm not really sold 100% on Astral Chain yet. You have these police characters that kind of do a Power Rangers dance and summon these machines that fight other kinds of machine looking things. Concept might work well, or it might just be way too Japanese and way too much. Here's the machine thing, and I'm not sure if there's a picture here of the enemy that I saw. There's like an enemy, so like this really might be not much of a game at all. It's due out for the Switch on August 30th. There's also some concern you could certainly take away from having yet another Platinum Games game as a Nintendo exclusive. Like instead of being a multi-console release like Bayonetta 1 was, it puts the fear in my heart that Bayonetta 2 and Bayonetta 3 may never come to PC, which there's a decent chance that is true, and it may mean that Platinum Games is really not ever going to make any more PC or multi-console releases. Excuse me, I keep getting tickles in my throat. Probably talk too much. The good thing about, I guess, scheduling videos, if I get around to actually doing it, is I can stay silent and let my throat rest a little bit, but it never is enough. I really would need to take almost a year off, I think, before I could fully stop my voice from being as damaged and used out as I think it is.
Here we go.
TechRaptor has an article. Hasbro announces the first Overwatch board game. This isn't really video game related, but yeah, a Hasbro Overwatch Monopoly game. Whatever. At this point, I kind of have to question the viability of even being into Overwatch right now, because it does kind of start to boil down to a weird scenario where Overwatch is a little bit played out, Activision Blizzard's in trouble, and there's just probably a lot of people who were playing Overwatch a couple of years ago have moved on to Fortnite or PUBG, and it has a player base certainly, but I don't know how big it is or if it's really growing.
This guy's toast.
It might be very logical at this point to abandon all Activision Blizzard products and just hope the company goes out of business and that whoever buys up the assets treats the customers better and treats the properties better. Speaking slightly facetiously about treating your products oddly, Double Fine licensed out their kid-friendly RPG game Costume Quest to Amazon Prime, and it got turned into a cartoon. One assumes these are the brother and sister characters you could pick to play as, and these are the two friends. The animation style looks a little off, and it, to me, seems rather questionable how long you can stretch out a Costume Quest series, because they barely had enough story to make 2 games out of that. And frankly, I would have preferred them to every year just put out some more DLC or a new release of the same game, kind of like how World of Warcraft does it, just to say, hey, we've got some more DLC to this game, why don't you buy it again, and if you haven't played it before, and then if you've already played it before, here's a couple hours of an experience to play during Halloween. It's not even really a high threshold of content that I would expect to see. I can't do anything. Yeah, just in the turn here. Yeah, just in the turn here. Next we've got a game on Steam called a bunch of Asian characters, Towers to Mortal. I imagine English is not supported on this. Looks like it's a strategy game. Or of some sort. English not supported, $2.99, simplified Chinese. This is pretty much the first Chinese game we've seen on the release too. Alright, do this. And do this.
This guy's toast.
And in the turn.
Hand is too full.
Next we have a game on Steam called Northern Lights. This looks like one of those Limbo-esque style games, and it's really going to come down, I think, to reviews here. This doesn't look particularly terrible or particularly good, so yeah, this is one I'll put on the follow list and we'll see what people say. It's $1.79 discounted right now. I can't get enough information on that as it is to figure out whether that would be one worth playing or not. Gamatsu has an article, Shovel Knight, King of Cards, Showdown, and Treasure Trove physical editions have been delayed by several months. No date until we have a date is the quote. These, I believe, are side games that are for the Switch. I should read instead of just guess. Here's what Shovel Knight Showdown looks like. It looks like it's a fighting game. Yeah. Physical editions. I think we're Switch games. The releasing, well, apparently it's tagged all the consoles, basically. Yeah. The releasing of physical editions of small indie games certainly run into some problems, and it was something that a lot of developers were getting away from, that they didn't care. They would just sell digitally and they do better by that. But it's started to become popular again. So apparently it still gets you a little bit more sales, which is shocking to somebody in the United States when you think about how GameStop is failing pretty terribly. There is no Toys R Us at the moment. The number of small indie games in a Walmart or a Target or any other general retail store is going to be extremely low to zero. This is a interesting looking game I'm looking at. So next on Steam we've got this game called Goblin Quest Escape, which seems like it might be an infinite runner, but it also seems like it's kind of a gauntlet style running around game. Escaping the dungeons. And you can buy upgrades and such. There's enough polish here to put this on the follow list. It's $4.24. It very possibly won't ever get any reviews, or might not be that really good of a game, or it might be a cell phone port, or any number of things, but it's at least good enough to give it a look. So we're trying to go through all this news, which we're not going to make it through all of this. We're 1 hour long, so I made one 1 hour episode, and now I'm making one 2 hour episode. Tech Raptor has an article. John Romero's Sigil Doom mod has been delayed until April. I suppose this is as valid news as any other announcement of a game that was announced too early and then immediately delayed, as so many Japanese games do. Here we got kind of a hype article from Gamatsu. The World Next Door launches March 28th. This looks like it's a game from the Switch eShop and PC for $14.99. Ah, this is that Viz Media game I already talked about. So I've got redundant tabs open. I'll have to keep an eye out for that. Here's a game that says it's a visual novel and a fantasy simulation combined with a stock trading simulator. Which to me just sounds like a random mix of words. So what does this look like? It's called Divine Business Fantasy Trading Game. And yeah, somebody made a stock simulator, and then they did. I think this is actually pretty good Western animation. Like, there's a lot of detail and toning here. This artist actually knows how to draw, and it's definitely not taking influence from anime, which is always nice to see. That being said, this game is $3.59 early access. I don't see any way I would really play this game, because I don't want to play a stock trading simulator, even if you put a fantasy wrapping over it. That just does not sound interesting to me at all. Let's go here. And here. End the turn. Here's a story we haven't covered yet. GameIndustry.biz has an article. YouTube reverses bans after mistaking Pokemon Go's combat points for child pornography. So, a lot of people make Pokemon Go videos on YouTube. And there is IV, which means something in Pokemon Go. And then there is combat points, which are CP. The predecessor to this is a relatively big YouTuber made a video complaining about child exploitation videos on YouTube being run rampant. This has been a consistent issue, I suppose, and complaint against YouTube is where either the comments overly sexualized videos of real children on YouTube, or the content creators themselves are putting their the children in overly sexualized appearances. In general, I think maybe YouTube is just going to have to say no children whatsoever without major okaying by the parents and like background checks and such. Ryan's toy reviews probably wouldn't even be affected by that, since he just got like a Nickelodeon TV show, from what I heard. But yeah, if it was just literally you cannot put any children on YouTube whatsoever without it being automatically blurred out, like full screen blurred out, that it may be what it gets to. But that's not what they did. Instead, there was these complaints. I think in a rush to fix it, they had an AI go wild, and anything with the letter CP, which could mean so many different things just in their mind, meant child porn. It is a similar story that has happened before, where where people accidentally have a typo where they say SS and then all of a sudden they're a Nazi. Or they type in the number 13 and all of a sudden they're a Nazi, and they're like, yeah, everybody knows that SS and the number 13 is alt-right coded language for white racism, white supremacy. Yeah. The subtitle on this article is "Content Creators Complain About the Lack of Communication with Google, Urge Against Automated Reviews." It would have been so easy for YouTube to have not made this mistake, and this is another great example of just YouTube not even knowing how their own code and system will affect their own database, like because they just throw it in this blind box system where I guess where they have no clue what's gonna happen. They just are gonna do something and see what happens. Alright, so we've got about 2 hours for this recording, and I'm going to just mention some things, and then let's see. I'm gonna try and move forward. Otherwise, apparently, according to GamesIndustry.biz, Crackdown 3 was the most played premium title on Xbox One last week. It being free certainly helped that. 2 different Steins Gate games, Steins Gate Elite and Steins Gate Linear Bounded Phonograph, are on Steam. Gamma Sutra has an article. Sony is readying to shut down the PlayStation Vita production in Japan. Okay. Let's see. Gamma Sutra has an article designing new and exciting places to clean up gore in the game Viscera. Clean up details, new DLC. So we have a bit of a picture here we can see where wearing gloves in slightly different area. I'm not sure if anybody really is going to get to the point where they would want to go back and play Viscera Cleanup Detail, but maybe. I still would love to cover that series. Secrets apparently going to be introduced, and puzzle mechanics are apparently going to be introduced, which is interesting. Maybe in an Easter egg fashion. Let's see. A synth punk roguelike action shooter called Black Future 88 is coming to the Switch in 2019. It's already on Steam, so I'll put it on the follow list and see if that interests me. Just trying to cover. GameIndustry.biz has an article: Improbable's CCO departs the company to return to making games. Bill Roper will join Author Digital to work on narrative-focused RPGs. He was the chief creative officer. That's what a CCO is. And no, I did not know that. GameIndustry.biz has the same article about Tencent introducing streaming rules. Yeah, screw that. We already talked about the YouTube's changes to the community guideline strike. So far, people don't seem to be super upset about that one, which it's nice to hear that YouTube, even if it was by accident, can do something that doesn't piss off everybody. GameIndustry.biz has an article: the SEIS/EIS funding changes hurting the UK gaming studios. How new government rules have created a catch-22 problem for developers, suspended a £150 million fund, and damaged investors' confidence. Yeah. This is the Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme, or the Enterprise Investment Scheme. Yeah, the UK is not doing a great job supporting its video game industry, which is pretty small. I think I said in the last stream, in the last footage, that one way the UK could certainly help the video game industry is if they actually introduced freedom of privacy and freedom of speech in their countries, which they kind of don't have. It's not anywhere as bad as other countries, but it's still there. We already talked about Visceral Cleanup Crew. There's a lot of games I'm skipping over and we're going to have to talk about on Friday. GameIndustry.biz has an article: Google teases a GDC reveal. Tech giant promises, quote, all will be revealed at the Game Developers Conference keynote address next month. I cannot imagine they are doing anything other than updating Android Play Store for games. Like, I don't think... well, they did have this demo where you could play Assassin's Creed Odyssey in the streaming to the Google Chrome browser, but I don't think they're coming out with a console. That would be pretty crazy. Although timing would be good to do it. One more console, probably not a big problem. As far as competition, we already talked about Vanbrandt's Cold Souls launching April 25th. So, trying to go through all this. TechRaptor has an article: Chinese RPG Sword and Fairy 6 coming to the PlayStation 4 this spring. Sword and Fairies, not a series I have heard anything about. So, I'm not sure if the previous 5 games have made it to English. It doesn't look terrible, certainly. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I'd like to see good quality Chinese games come out instead of cheap Chinese things on Steam. But most of them still don't feel great. GameIndustry.biz has an article: Eastshade focusing on the bigger picture, how a former AAA environment artist created a gorgeous, violence-free open-world RPG with a tiny team. So Eastshade apparently is a violence-free open RPG game. Yeah, okay. I'll see if I can find out if Eastshade is on Steam and playable, and I'll play a violence-free RPG and then probably say it's boring. TechRaptor has a similar article, but slightly different. Far Cry New Dawn tops the UK charts. Crackdown 3 relies on Game Pass. So here's the list as far as what's sold in the UK. Far Cry New Dawn, Metro Exodus, Red Dead Redemption, Jump Force, FIFA 19. I hear Jump Force is garbage. Resident Evil 2, New Super Mario Bros. U, Kingdom Hearts 3, Mario Kart 8, and Call of Duty. Was Kingdom Hearts 3 on the Japanese Famitsu sales charts? Mostly these charts are almost mirror images of other countries, so the hype and the interest in games is not too different, really, depending on different countries. See, Gamatsu has an article, Famitsu Review Scores Issue 1577, and here we have a DOA character. So they gave DOA 6, 9, 9, 9, and 8, which is 35 out of 40, pretty good. Famitsu, I believe, is only giving out 3 or 4 40s. Forgotten Anne is 32 out of 40, still pretty good. Left Alive is 31 out of 40. Kind of an interesting review system too. I assume these are 4 different reviewers giving their own personal reviews. Ride 3 is probably getting down there. It's not that good. Tsuke de Ping Pong for the Switch was 28 out of 40. I bet at that point you're talking pretty bad. Wizard Symphony is 30 out of 40. And Zoid's Wild King a blast. I need to develop more familiarity as far as how they score most games. Are most things in the 35s, or are most games in the 20s? I would think the Japanese would probably be a little bit more critical, and we would see games that are 4s, 5s, 2s, and even 1s. But we didn't see it this time. I'm not sure I'm going to really commit to looking at Famitsu review scores when they come out. Let's see. TechRaptor has an article. The Game Bakers announces a co-op RPG Haven coming to PC in 2020. This is way too early to be talking about this game, certainly, if it's coming out in 2020. Doesn't look terrible. In fact, looks pretty good. Although, it probably is just an RPG. Let's see. Are you gonna load this article? Apparently not. Gamasutra has an article. Nitro Games begins layoff talks, could cut the workforce in half. The Finnish mobile studio Nitro Games could lay off half of its workforce in an attempt to reduce operating costs. We've seen a lot of that lately. I suspect we'll see a lot more. TechRaptor has an article, Path of Exile. Synthesis launches March 8th, simultaneous with the PS4 release. So more Path of Exile games. Still not sure I want to play this series. I'm not even sure I know which series this is. I think Path of Exile is kind of like a Diablo Torchlight clone. It's not too bad. We already talked about the YouTube changes. Again, we already talked about Com2 US making a majority stake in Day 7. We already talked about the PS Vita ending soon. A lot of duplicate tabs. I guess my my anti-duplicate tab plugin messed up. Let's see. Will that load? Yeah, I talked about this article. Queer characters in gaming, a brief history, tagged from TechRaptor. This is, let's see, how many paragraphs is this? This is a long, long article for what is the what is really just a almost dissertation style, and TechRaptor in no way has this many paragraphs in any other article they write. So I mean, I guess in a general idea, if you look at a reporting site and they usually give barely 3 paragraphs to something, and then they give what was at least 30 paragraphs in this article to something, you know they have a distinct passion, and they probably are pushing some opinion or agenda there, and that's really all this is. There's no reason for this article to have come out in the time it did. Like, no reason whatsoever. And man, somebody got paid for at least a month researching all of this and writing all of this, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of it is just straight up wrong. I'm not willing to even spend the time to read it, so but yeah, a lot of it is just a kind of opinion piece with some backing bits of information. And I think at this point I'm still at the end of my tabs, because I did not make it to the Humble Bundle. So I'm close to the end, but I'm not there. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, there's like 15 or so more tabs of games to talk about. So Friday's gonna be a nightmare. Let's look at the Humble Bundle and see if there's anything new. I'm not sure there really is. There's a mixed bundle called Fantasy Game Dev that seems like it's new. There's Pathfinder's 10th anniversary, but that's a book bundle. There's 5 days left on Great Game Maker games. None of those games interested me. And there's a comics bundle, Start Here, which are just like volume 1s of certain comics, but certainly probably not the best comics to start off with when one of them is Saga Volume 1. I kind of doubt that is in line with, this is the first kind of comic book you should ever read. It's kind of like saying read Sandman Volume 1 to get into comic books. You'll read some of the best ever and then you'll hate everything else. Trust me, I know, that's my exact experience with comics. And I guess I'm on Twitter now, and I'm just gonna quickly scroll down and see if there's any news. Epic pulls YouTube ads after predatory videos discovered. So Fortnite pre-roll ads have been removed as YouTube continues to struggle with the recommendation algorithm. This is an interesting story. I guess we'll cover it more. The question is, you can either look it up yourself, a GameIndustry.biz article, but is it because of the latest complaint of predatory child exploitation videos, or is it predatory videos because they're linking to they're putting Fortnite ads on things that have Fortnite cheats or something else? Completely, like, just calling something predatory is not descriptive enough. You could have called it child predatory, predatory child videos. Yeah, I don't know if we talked about, I don't even know if that's video game worthy. I guess it isn't. So I'll not mention that, because that's just another drama and rant. I guess I can throw the word out. There's this thing called Anime Gate that's kind of happening right now with accusations against a anime voice actor, Vic Mignogna, and people are upset on like both sides, as usual. But the only way that even becomes closely related to video games is he was a voice actor on Ruby, RWBY with Rooster Teeth, and he got fired from that, and he got fired from a job on Funimation. Funimation also makes video games, but that kind of doesn't, yeah, it really doesn't cross the line to really relating to video games, even though there are those kind of games out there. Now, with all hope, the web peaks worked perfectly fine today, hopefully, and the video footage worked perfectly fine today, and we are good. There is one daily quest on the European account that we'll do on Friday, and we did cover all the news, but we didn't cover all the games. There's still a lot of games to go through. That's going to be it for this stream, though. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below in the description box. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.